Now let's go around the league. A lot of things have happened in the NFL we could talk about. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is my old team. You know, with Peyton Hillis, I talked about him actually getting a chance. Well, in Philadelphia, Jeffrey Lurie, Andy Reid, they actually gave somebody a second chance in Michael Vick. And all he does is comes out and dominates at the quarterback position. I mean, this is a guy who's playing better than he played before he went to jail. He's doing everything right. You could see the maturity on the field. You could hear it in his interviews, and everybody has rallied around him. All you have to do is ask Deshaun Jackson. All Deshaun Jackson wants to do after big games is talk about Michael Vick. And from what I hear in that locker room, it's seeping over to the defensive side of the ball. When they're out there watching the effort that Michael Vick's out there, they're trying to match it on the defensive side. So my hat's off to Jeffrey Lurie and my hat's off to Michael Vick with taking a second chance and running with it. And if it wasn't for Tom Brady, I would say Michael Vick would be the MVP of the league.
Andy Reid and offensive coordinator Marty Morningwig have done a great job coaching Vick. Vick's no longer running back playing quarterback. He's a legitimate quarterback who's incredibly accurate, and he hadn't thrown interceptions. That's what blows me away, that he can play as little as he's played in 4 years, and he's not throwing the ball into coverage. He's just done a fabulous job. Now, you mentioned Tom Brady. The Patriots, at one point this year, lost to Cleveland. When they lost to Cleveland, they rallied and they have won 5 in a row. And during that 5-game winning streak, they've averaged 39.2 points a game. Now, not many teams in NFL history have done that, and I think we would agree, and most others, they got to be a Super Bowl favorite. How have they done this?
Again, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. When you have the best coach in the game and arguably the best quarterback, you're going to have some success. And everyone in that team, I don't want to, get away from all the other players, from the special team players to the defensive players. There's a system, and they just fit into the system. And I think that's why they got rid of Randy Moss. He started speaking against the team. He started going a wayward direction away from the team. So they got rid of him because they know how important it is to have that chemistry and cohesiveness in that locker room. And everybody just seems to be on the same page when you talk about the New England Patriots.
Now, did you have any idea the Steelers would be in this position considering who they didn't have to start the season?
Oh, actually I didn't, and that's another team I'm impressed with. I was more impressed with them while their leader, their star quarterback, was serving his 4-game suspension because they just went out there and dominated teams on defense and with their running game. But now that Big Ben is back, they're a legitimate playoff contender, and I think if they catch their stride at the right time, they may go deep into the playoffs. And Big Ben, you talk about mental toughness. He's been through a lot this year, and he just goes out there and he leads his team to victory. And he's not putting up monster numbers through the air, but he's kind of like a David Garrard. He's winning with his legs. He's showing toughness. Some of his best plays don't even show up on the stat sheet, but it's him breaking tackles, breaking sacks, and getting rid of the ball. And this is a guy that's definitely a leader on the field.
The guy that really impressed me this year was Peyton Manning. He had 11 interceptions in a 3-game span. But you know what? He had so many players injured. And then the replacements got injured. And that's not counting problems on defense. Bob Sanders being out again. At one point, they were missing 4 starters on defense as well. Of course, Dwight Clark, Austin Collie, Joseph Adai. And what the Colts have been able to do under the circumstances, I don't think anybody other than New England would be able to do as well as they have. Have they surprised you like they've surprised me?
They have surprised me, and you just named off a list of their superstar players, and they're still finding a way to squeak by games and win, and who knows, they might squeak into the playoffs. And if they get in, I don't care if it's as a wild card or if it's as a division championship, it's going to be impressive because every week it seems like one of their starters goes out. They just insert another guy who's a 7th-round draft pick, and he ends up catching balls from Peyton Manning. They had a lull during the season where they lost a couple in a row, and they didn't look like the Indianapolis Colts, but it's because of the injuries, and they're still finding a way to fight and try to get into that playoff picture.
Have you shed a tear for the Cowboys?
Not yet, and I don't think I will. But that's one of my biggest surprises. When you look at the talent that was on the team, when you look at what they did last year in the playoffs, the way they dismantled the Philadelphia Eagles, all those guys were coming back. Wade Smith is a likable guy. I thought players would love him. They would love to play for him. And they start the season the way they started. I did not see that coming. They definitely, early on, didn't utilize their talent. And after the firing, after Jason Garrett stepped up, they played a little better, but it was too late.
They've played harder for Garrett than they did for Wade, but it's still been a disastrous season. 11-5, they finally got the albatross off that they couldn't win a playoff game. I had them playing Minnesota in the championship. Minnesota, of course, another disaster. Brett Favre, don't you know he wished he'd have stayed in Hattiesburg and still been able to get the $20 million he's played this year. But not only has he been hurt, he's had the problems off the field, of course, and it's just amazing how bad they've become. They've wasted Adrian Peterson. They got that great defensive line. They got good receivers. It's amazing what a disappointment they've been. They fired Brad Childress. Now, of course, they've got Leslie Frazier, and I believe Leslie Frazier is going to keep that job.
Yeah, he deserves to keep it. I don't think he should be judged on what he does for the remainder of the season. They need to give him an entire offseason. They need to let him go through a draft, and they need to get him a quarterback to go in there so he could help mold a young quarterback, because I don't think Tavares Jackson is an answer. I think he may be a good backup, but they need to find a new face.
Everybody says that he interviewed really well when he interviewed in the past, but he didn't get a job. Now, I think he's going to get a long-term deal because Ziggy Wolf, the owner, loves him, and Wolf is dying to get a guy in there that will go develop Tavares Jackson. But like you said, they got to have another quarterback. This has been a great time for Jackson to distinguish himself, and he's not done it. I thought he would do better. He was Childress's hand-picked choice for number 2, but you know how it is. If a former coach picks a quarterback, there's a good chance the new coach is not going to like him, and they're going to have a shot because it's going to be a really good draft for quarterbacks, I believe. I think they'll find a replacement, but I tell you what, I bet you Brett Favre can't get out of town quick enough.
He can, but with that $18 million, maybe he'll buy himself a sports car and just speed out of Minnesota back to Mississippi.